I'm Bianca Piazza of MovieWeb. I really enjoyed your movie Gazer, and it really is something different in the portfolio of movies that have been coming out recently, which was refreshing. It really was. So first of all, congratulations on your movie. I have to say that. But so I wanted to start off by saying I watched your movie and read a lot about it, and so obviously it's like a voyeuristic neo-noir, and I know you both said it's like heavily inspired by like 70s and 80s um thrillers and mysteries. And you've also specifically mentioned that inspirations like Chinatown, Blow Up, and the work of Paul Schrader and Hitchcock, influenced the film. I'm sure other people have said this, but I also, got like notes of Brian De Palma and Cronenberg. So how did you marry all these retro influences in a 2024 indie film?
Hmm. Well, that's a great question. Uh, I think more than anything, we made the movie we wanted to see, and we love all of those directors and a lot of the films that those directors have made. Um, and I think with Gazer, we we knew that we wanted to tell the majority of films that you just named typically have a male protagonist, right? Leading the film, leading the story. And we were interested in what the female perspective of that would be. And I'm fortunate enough to be best friends with Ariella. So, having Ariella be a co-writer and then lead the film uh, really was helpful in achieving that. But I think it's just they don't really make movies like this anymore. And if they do, it's turned into a streaming limited series or some bullshit like that. So it felt like this was a good opportunity. Nobody was waiting for us to make a movie. Nobody was helping us make a movie. We did this on our own with $80,000, and we shot it over 2.5 years on weekends in April and November. So we were able to kind of really craft the thing that we wanted to see at the pace that we wanted to do it at, in the style that we wanted to do it with um, with no rules.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, we were just so we were interested in doing a character study that was within the context of a noir. We loved a movie like The Conversation, I think, or Burning,
Taxi Driver,
Taxi Driver, yeah.
First Reformed.
But those films in particular, I mean, they're centered on one character. We know as much as that character, and we just loved that examination of somebody who gets wrapped up in something bigger than them. Uh,
Well, also too, sorry, one more thing is like the other thing is that we noticed that Ariel worked at the Angelica Film Center, which has a repertory aspect to it, and the repertory theaters are doing really well. Young people are showing up to go see these old movies, but to them, it's a brand new movie. They've never seen it before. They know there's a reputation behind it, but that's all they know for the most part. So to 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 us, we're kind of like, well, that means that people are interested in original stories again. They're tired of the IP, they're tired of the IP adjacent stuff. It's like they want to hear true stories again, not true stories, but real stories again in this day and age, like everything. Yeah, I don't know.
I've heard people who are like, diehard cinephiles, and I've heard people who see the occasional movies like every once in a while. I've heard both like those groups of people say this, what you're saying, like we're tired of like sequels and reboots and like, yeah, IP stuff. It's like, everyone's exhausted. And that's why your movie was so refreshing. So I had a question about something you mentioned that no one was coming to you to make a movie and you did this all on your own and stuff. So I noticed that uh, there's a lot of articles and specifically headlines that are specifically talking about how Gazer is a self-funded picture and, also one that got into, the Cannes Film Festival's director's fortnight section. Congratulations, of course. So with the current state of the film industry, which is so optimistic and so great, no, the one seemingly focused, which I feel like it's a very recent conversation, focused on like follower counts and stuff like that. Why do you believe this tidbit, that it's like your movie is self-funded? Why do you think that's kind of almost like a focus point in terms of like coverage of the movie, and why do you think it's being scrutinized in such a way?
Well, I think, Ryan and I weren't from the industry in any way. We didn't really have access. We wanted to make a film, but we didn't really know how, and we didn't really know, how to break through. All we knew, we kind of took it a piece by piece, where we were like, okay, we want to make a film. We don't necessarily know if it's ever going to be seen by anybody or what's going to happen to it, but what we do have control of is making the film that we want to see. But I think what you're saying is, the industry, I feel, is in such a delicate place in a way. Like, it's so expensive to see films. It's so expensive to make films. I don't know. I think there was a period of time in independent cinema where more films like ours were platformed, like the 90s. Sundance, was a big way for people who did it like us, to have a platform. But then we started to kind of go away from that, where the studios were making indie films, and they were kind of taking the place of these more like underground, taking the spots, for where indie cinema was being kind of platformed. But anyway, yeah, I think it's rare these days, for a film like ours, for the budget, to find its place, at a festival like Cannes. And I don't necessarily know why, but it is rare. It seems like such a kind of closed circle in a way. But yeah, I think we're just very grateful that our film was embraced, and that we see more people from the top down, who are, searching for films like this,
Yeah.
who are willing to give filmmakers like us an opportunity to present, a micro budget film to a larger audience. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a shift happening. But yeah, I would
It
say
was,
anything else.
I mean, I
it
can
was,
expand on it, but I might get in trouble.
I mean, I'm not going to stop you. So,
Okay, so I think it's kind of like, to quote Field of Dreams, if you build it, they'll come, right? Tech moguls took over the studios. We have people that are running things that don't give a fuck about movies. They don't care about the arts. They care about algorithms and content, right?
Yeah, they're focused on what works.
Exactly. And therefore we homogenized everything, and we've put everything into tiny boxes where you have something fun like Linklater's Hitman that comes out, and we're gonna throw it on streaming, and that's not gonna be in a movie theater. We have something like Black Bag is in theaters right now, and I don't know why people aren't rushing to the movies to see that right now. I think it's because they don't know, there's a 2-week theatrical window, and I think people are starting to talk about that and complain about that. But all of this happened because of streamers. Streamers are literally the fucking problem, and the people running these streaming companies, these platforms, are the problem. And I think people are ready for that change, which is great. But now we need to be supporting the films that are making those changes, right? It's like, I know Steven Soderbergh's fine; he makes 10 movies a year, but like, we need to show up. If that man makes a movie, we got to show up and buy tickets, because he's still an indie filmmaker in many, many regards, which means he needs support. And God knows we fought for a theatrical,
Yeah.
but it could be dead in a week. It just, we need people to show up. We need people to support and take the chance, and like the movie or hate the movie. We got to get people back in theaters. And part of the thing that sucks about that is the prices. They are high.
Yeah.
Um,
But another way to do it is to generate new types of films. I think audiences are tired. I think they're tired of seeing the same people. I think they're tired of seeing the same, stories, like Ryan said, based on algorithms that are being kind of fed to us. I think people are just interested in seeing something fresh. So I hope with Gazer, whether or not they like it or don't, at least it's something that's different, in
yeah.
the space. And we feel very grateful that, that the film is given that opportunity to do that. But I hope it's the beginning of a shift. And I feel like we are at that point.
Yeah, like a new wave. And I don't want, I have more questions, but something you said about where people are sick of seeing the same people. I saw on Twitter people talking about like, oh, White Lotus, like I think Nicole Kidman said she wants to be in the next season. And, obviously the people in White Lotus, we've seen them before, but they're not like they're not Nicole Kidman's. And someone was like, White Lotus isn't for Nicole Kidman's. That's not what people want to constantly be seeing, even though we do love Nicole, but I could go on and on.
No,
She works.
and
I
that's a
love
great,
how much she works. Yeah.
that's a great point. And I think I kind of just real quick building on that though, I think people want to see more of themselves on screen. A lot of these older actors that Gene Hackman, like he was not. I love Gene Hackman. He's one of my favorite actors, but he's not Rock Hudson. You know what I mean? Like he's not the most beautiful man that ever lived. He looks like a real person. He looks like somebody you'll see on the street.
Yeah.
And we've gotten away from that where all we have are really pretty people that aren't capable of doing a lot of the things they're pretending to do on screen. And I think the normal everyday people can tell the difference.
But I think it also goes down to story
For sure.
as well. It's like people, we come from very blue collar backgrounds, working class backgrounds. And I think, one thing that we really wanted to capture with Gazer, speaking of influences, I mean, like The Wrestler in a way, was a huge reference for us as well. But we wanted to show the focus on an underdog, and we wanted to place this underdog in a space that was very real for us, which is Jersey. Jersey is such an important part of the film. But we hope that, we really wanted to center on somebody who felt like a real person that you would necessarily not think twice about when you pass them on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Frankie's whole kind of persona. She is living as a ghost in the world. And don't we all kind of feel that way sometimes?
Right. I was told I only have a few minutes left, so there are some more questions I wanted to get to. But I absolutely see that. So there was a particular line that really stood out to me in the film. How can time heal if you don't even feel time passing? So what inspired the addition of this line, and how do you believe it speaks to Frankie's personal journey and inner turmoil with, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, dyschroman
Just chronometria.
her condition where she can't sense time passing, and please speak on that. It was really
thank you for pinpointing that line. I lost my brother in 2017, and the years go by. It's sorry, it's a little hard to talk about, but the grief that I felt when he first passed is the grief that I feel every day. And even though I don't suffer from dyschronometria, I still, that line very much speaks to how I feel about loss. Frankie, who is dealing with time perception disorder, it just, I think, strikes, it just holds that much more true to her. But yeah, there was for a long time, even to today, I really didn't feel time passing. So people always say time heals, and I was like, it doesn't, but if you're kind of drifting through the days, like how could it possibly? That's really where it came from. And it was one of those moments where we were writing, that it just felt like the most honest thing to say.
It really, I immediately wrote it down. It really stood out to me. It's a beautiful line. I want to sneak in one more question. So I mentioned David Cronenberg before, which like I said, I'm sure other people have mentioned that as well. So there are body horror elements in Gazer, reminiscent of like Videodrome and stuff like that. So what made you decide to include bits of horror in like a mystery neo-noir thriller, and how did that come together?
So when we were exploring Frankie's past, what happened between her and her husband, at first they were flashbacks, and then they developed into dream sequences. And we started changing the language from dream sequences to nightmares. And we looked at each other and like, this is a fucking nightmare. Let's write it. Let's really illustrate a nightmare. And we, you know, we kept saying like a haunted past and all these things. So we kept exploring that, and we were talking about our own nightmares, our own dreams, and so on. And you know, there's dream logic is such an interesting thing to explore. You know, and it was a great way to kind of to tell the story of what happened between Frankie and her husband, but also keep it ambiguous enough where the audience is able to kind of project their own opinions onto it.
Well, the whole film is from Frankie's perspective. So this is Frankie's, it's Frankie's psyche. It's like, this is how she's interpreting her own trauma. This is how she's interpreting the past. So it's not like we're taking an objective perspective and saying like, this is what happened. It's like, this is what happened through Frankie's experience of it. This is how she's processing it. And like Ryan said, as we were thinking about how she's processing it and what actually happened, it's so terrible. So we wanted the audience, we wanted to use genre in a way that really elevated that, the way Frankie feels, you know? But yeah, I think we've said this before, it's like Frankie is dealing with, I think, the two most physical things when in those, as she's processing her grief. It is the death of her husband and the birth of her daughter. She's dealing with truly life and death, and there's nothing more physical than that. So it's not the use of body body horror and the physicality is really so specific
To her experiences.
But to also just like I said, like elevate those feelings. I mean, nothing is more physical than that.
That is such a beautiful explanation. Like it really is. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about that before we go?
Oh gosh, we could go on and
Yeah,
on and
if
on.
you have any other
Yeah.
questions too, you could just email us and we'll, you know, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that was all the time we both have. And thank you for being vulnerable and open. And this was such a lovely conversation. And congratulations on your movie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Likewise, so nice to meet you.